Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something truly fascinating. We're going to explore how ancient native storytelling does a whole lot more than just entertain us. I mean, it literally bridges faiths, it crosses borders, and it physically shapes the landscape of modern Nepal. We're looking at this incredible intersection where geography meets mythology, discovering how the very ground people walk on today is defined by these epic tales passed down through generations.
So how exactly do you tell the story of a city's birth? Well, when it comes to the Kathmandu Valley, you aren't going to find the answer buried in some dry geological survey or an old architectural record. No way. Instead, it's found in a sweeping, utterly magical narrative. You see, these local legends, they don't just record history. They literally give a landscape its soul. And the birth of Kathmandu is just a premier example of how an ancient native narrative acts as the ultimate foundational blueprint for an entire civilization.
Let's set the scene. Imagine a time when this valley wasn't a valley at all. Indigenous myth tells us it was actually a roaring primordial lake called Nagarhada. The ancient sources describe a massive 14-mile stretch of water totally boxed in by 4 huge mountain peaks. But it wasn't just ordinary water. This lake was inhabited by serpent kings known as Nagas. And, get this, the surface of the water was alight with luminous methane flames. The absolute brightest flame burned right on top of what is now Swayambhu Hill, and it was worshipped as a divine light. It is such a striking, intensely visual way to start our story.
According to the lore documented in the Swayambhu Puran, here's how the action unfolds. Step 1, an enlightened being, a bodhisattva named Manjushree, arrives all the way from the mountains of China. He wants to worship this divine, glowing lotus flame. So, for step 2, he takes out a magical sword called Chandahasa and literally cleaves open a gorge in the mountains. The lake's waters come roaring out through this brand new Chobhar Gorge. And as for step 3, well, the foundational tales account for the displaced Naga kings too. They were respectfully relocated to the nearby Tadaha Lake, which is a real body of water you can actually still visit today.
Now, what's really amazing about this is that this ancient lore isn't just some dusty old memory, it's a living, breathing blueprint for the culture. Because Manjushree and the first king made a pact to relocate the Serpent Kings, the local inhabitants of Kathmandu still celebrate the festival of Nag Panchami every single year. They do this to honor the serpents who gave up their watery homes so the city could be built. The fact that Tadaha Lake still exists alongside this vibrant yearly festival really highlights how these native myths are still dictating modern cultural practices. This brings us to what I like to call the prism effect of local legends. Native storytelling is incredibly dynamic. It actually allows Manjushree's identity to shift seamlessly depending on who's telling the tale. In Buddhist traditions, for example, he's revered as the bodhisattva of wisdom, the primordial creator of the valley. But in the Hindu tradition, he's deeply connected to, and sometimes even worshipped as, Saraswati, the Hindu goddess of wisdom. During the Sri Panchami festival, devotees actually venerate him in this splendid form. It just goes to show how deeply these ancient narratives can intertwine totally different religious worldviews into one shared cultural identity.
And the native lore definitely doesn't hold back on the magic either. Manjushree is given these incredible magical powers, but they aren't just cheap parlor tricks. They're actually profound narrative tools used to teach some pretty complex philosophies. He's a master of transcendental insight. He creates these illusory disciples to convert his opponents. In one totally wild tale from the sutras, he even shapeshifts into a handsome youth just to capture a prostitute's attention and guide her toward spiritual truth, the Dharma. These foundational tales use magic to make high philosophy accessible, proving to everyday followers that the material world can absolutely be transformed at will.
Now, if we dig into ancient academic texts like the Manjushree Pranirvana Sutra, we find a mini-biography that has actually sparked debate for centuries. It's super interesting because while the Kathmandu myth says he came from China, this fascinating Chinese translation traces his birth back to an Indian village. It paints him as this omnipresent religious missionary who generates immense spiritual benefits across 10 directions. This really highlights how regional legends will often take a universal roaming figure and root them deeply into their own local soil. Looking at the timeline of this textual migration, it's wild to see how these stories evolve as they cross geography. Back in the 1st and 2nd centuries, the cult originated in Indian Mahayana Buddhist sutras. Then, by the 5th century, it had migrated and was translated over to the Wutai Shan Mountains in China. And in later eras, total integration into the local Nepali context. It's just incredible to think that an ancient Indian concept traveled all the way to China and eventually became the ultimate foundational myth of Nepal.
But, and this is a crucial point, even within Buddhism itself, these stories are intensely local.
Just look at this quote from a nun at Kirti Vihara in Nepal. She points out that Theravada practitioners who focus strictly on the historical Sakyamuni Buddha don't recognize this magical tantric figure of Manjushree at all. It really proves that local lore isn't universally accepted as literal historical truth across the board. Instead, it serves as a very specific cultural lens utilized by specific communities to understand their unique world.
And honestly, debating the strict factual accuracy of the myth, that kind of misses the whole point. As the Museum of Nepal Arts perfectly notes, all history is a partially conceived truth, but it's still our foundation. Whether you view the draining of that lake as a geological shifting of tectonic plates or the mighty swing of a magical sword, these indigenous stories matter immensely. They are allegories meant to entertain and educate. And as the quote says, they should be told and retold continuously in every possible medium, because they're the very glue holding the community's heritage together.
So, let's ground all of this ethereal magic right back down into modern reality, because this foundational myth literally maps the physical world today. If you're ever in Kathmandu, you can take a short 8-kilometer drive from the city center straight to Chobhar Gorge, the exact legendary spot where that mythological sword struck the earth. Right there, you'll find Manjushree Park. It features the sacred Manjushree cave, which is believed to be his meditation spot. Today, it serves as this peaceful getaway where locals go for nature walks and, charmingly, dry picnics. The ancient magic has literally cultivated a lush, modern public space.
33. That is the height in feet of this magnificent stone statue of Manjushree holding his legendary sword, constructed right there in the park. And what's truly beautiful about this, it wasn't built by some distant government committee. It was constructed by the local Jalabinayak Community Forest Users Group back in 2019. It's such a testament to the community's active, ongoing dedication to physically immortalizing their creator myth. Native storytelling actually inspired everyday people to carve a 100-ton monument out of stone just to ensure this story stands tall for future generations.
For researchers diving into Manjushree, this whole phenomenon is basically a perfect case study in something called religious localization. It's the study of how a vast, universal figure becomes deeply, intimately woven into the everyday hearts of local people. Whether it's through morning songs called Namasangiti, through daily rituals, or through massive physical monuments at Chobhar, the grand epic of Manjushree isn't just an old story, it is lived out daily in the Kathmandu Valley.
It's just absolutely amazing, isn't it? To see how a story about a glowing lotus, a magical sword, and a drained lake is still dictating festivals, inspiring statues, and creating public parks centuries later. I want to leave you with this thought to ponder. As we've seen how native legends literally become modern landscapes in Nepal, what ancient native stories and myths are silently shaping the ground you walk on today? Thank you so much for joining this explainer. I really hope you feel inspired to go out and look for the hidden myths beneath your own city streets. Keep exploring and keep asking the big questions.